free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
I think a new world order is emerging.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific caste system.
We shall go on to the end. We shall fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We shall never surrender.
Welcome everybody. This is UCUI.tv with the Solvinur Event. I'm your host, Walter, also known as Solvinur. It's the name I use and that has anything to do with the internet. How you doing, guys? There's a couple of people in the chat. Hey everyone. Cap is there. Crack. Hey, good to see you back, buddy. Mr. Cooper. Grump is there. Hopper. Jules. Hey, what's up, Jules? Mr. Lucifer. Matty Clues. Otto is back. Road Dog is in the chat. Victory through vegetables. And 2 times Vince. And also 2 Anons. So, welcome everybody. It's been a hot day here in the Netherlands. Well, not that hot, but you know, for 22 of August 2015, it's pretty hot. And today we're going to do some more logical fallacies. In case you've never heard of logical fallacies, I'll do a little bit of explanation. Coffee, lekker. And of course, my cigarette. Grumpy is posting a link. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to do any Holocaust stuff, guys. You know where you got to go if you want to hear about that, right? It's another radio station that I don't even remember the host name, but apparently he's on at the same time as I am. And all those kind of things to do with Holocaust are more fit in that kind of radio. Alright. Logical fallacies, they are part of the trivium. And there's a difference between a classical trivium and a trivium method. The classical trivium, as I've explained before, has been used to control people. It's a perfect tool to control people, especially people's minds, because the trivium is a reflection of how your mind works. Right? Nowadays, most people do not know how their mind works due to lack of proper education. And if you don't know how your mind works, then you are even more easily mind controlled. Right, so that's the classical trivium. The trivium method explains how your mind works, and getting yourself acquainted with it will give you more self-esteem. You will be more sure of yourself. And the trivium means three. Tri from trivium is three. Vium, you can tie it back to via, but also voyager, for instance, for those of you who are more space-minded. Those words all tie back to vium, which means road. And so trivium where three roads meet, and the three are grammar, logic, and rhetoric, and so logical fallacies belongs to the logic part. Now, there is a specific order in which the trivium comes, namely grammar first, then logic, and then rhetoric, which is kind of logical, because the grammar is split up into two parts. There's special grammar and general grammar. The special grammar relates to, or is about, how words relate to each other in a specific language, like Dutch, German, French, English. So that's special grammar. We are not very interested in that. We are more interested in the general grammar, which is basically data or knowledge. But knowledge is more of a you see, data doesn't have to be true. Knowledge, as far as I'm concerned as a philosopher anyway, has to be true. So before you can name data knowledge, you'd first have to put it to the test using the second step, logic. Right? So, but first comes the data. And you cannot use logic unless you have your data first, because you would have to say, well, what am I going to use my logic on? Right? So that's why grammar comes first. Grammar can be seen as building blocks. You gather all kinds of data on a specific subject or topic. And all of those ideas, you could call them perhaps, all of those bits of data, on a specific topic, they need to fit together. That's why they are called building blocks also. And the fitting together you do by using your logic. So those are two really different things. First you gather data, that's your grammar, your general grammar. Then you start using the logic, trying to fit the pieces of the data together. Now, what happens a lot of the time is when you gather as much as information as you can get on a specific topic, there will be contradictions. Yes, Dan, it's live. It is. If you had listened from the start, you would have known. Because I named the date, right? 22 August 2015. So, by the way, I'm talking to somebody in the chat. If you want to go there, go to ucy.tv. Find the chat link and join the others. Where was I? What was I going to say before I got distracted? Ouch, Capt. Yeah. Oh yeah, I remember now. So if you start using your logic on the data collected and try to fit the pieces together, there might arise contradictions. Now, there's two, maybe more, but I can name two reasons why a contradiction seems to appear or actually appears. One is that you misunderstand the data that has been given, that you don't have a good grasp of the actual data, right? So somebody might say bike, for instance, it's a piece of data, and you're thinking of a motorcycle, for instance, and somebody else just thinks of a bike that, have pedals and you need to use your legs to move forward, right? So that's where a contradiction may arise. Another reason, which is probably more prevalent, I guess, is when you do have a correct understanding of the data. However, there are contradictions in the sense that the data seems to contradict, one piece of data seems to contradict another piece of data within a specific topic, right? So one piece of data might say X is 7 and the other piece of data that you've collected says X is 11, for instance. Blatant example is was discussing someone about the events of September 11th, and he was talking about how long it took before the towers disappeared, and he was talking about, what was it, 36 minutes or something like that, he said. And I was like, how do you get 36 minutes? It disappears in about 11 seconds. Right? So that's a contradiction, and you need to figure out for yourself which building block is actually valid and useful. So the logic part is where you need to start to think. Right? Let's see. One message from Skype, get that away, it's not important. Okay. So when you start using your logic, you need to make sure that you're not making mistakes, that you're not making an error in thinking. Alright, so a fallacy is basically an error in thinking, and specifically an error in thinking correctly. We are at number 30 from the 42 that we are discussing here. And this one is called middle ground, also known as golden mean fallacy or fallacy of moderation. The description: this fallacy is committed when it is assumed that the middle position between two extremes must be correct simply because it is the middle position. This sort of reasoning, quote unquote reasoning, you put that in quotes because it's not correct reasoning. This sort of reasoning has the following form. 1. Position A and B are two extreme positions. 2. C is a position that rests in the middle between A and B. 3. Therefore, C is the correct position. This line of reasoning is fallacious because it does not follow that a position is correct just because it lies in the middle of two extremes. Now, he's coming with an example. I'll give my opinion on the example after I gave it. And this is shown by the following example. Suppose that a person is selling his computer. He wants to sell it for the current market value, which is $800, and someone offers him $1 for it. It would hardly follow that $400.50 is the proper price. Now you might get an idea of what the fallacy of moderation or middle ground is about by this example. However, if it says that it has to do with the middle position between two extremes, then this example is not so very good, is it? Right? The current market value, which is $800, would not be an extreme position. Right? The extreme position is the $1 offered for it. That's only one extreme position. So the example could be worked on. This fallacy draws its power from the fact that a moderate or middle position is often the correct one. For example, a moderate amount of exercise is better than too much exercise or too little exercise. However, this is not simply because it lies in the middle ground between two extremes. It is because too much exercise is harmful and too little exercise is all but useless. The basic idea behind many cases in which moderation is correct is that the extremes are typically too much and not enough, and the middle position is enough. In such cases, the middle position is correct almost by definition. Alright, now I would argue against this also. Right? And this has to do with the fact that society as it runs today is insane. Right? So even if you choose a middle position somewhere, it's still insane. Doesn't matter. It should be kept in mind that while uncritically assuming that the middle position must be correct because it is the middle position is poor reasoning, it does not follow that accepting a middle position is always fallacious. As was mentioned, many times a moderate position is correct. However, the claim that a moderate or middle position is correct must be supported by legitimate reasoning. Right, so for instance, I'll give you a better example. There are politicians, mostly from communistic side, the socialist side, that would say, well, government should run more and more and more of the industry, and banks should be nationalized and all of that, right? And then there's the laissez-faire capitalist, which would say, well, leave us alone, right? Now, the middle position between that would be that government would have half of it, half of the control, right? Now, is that a good argument? Of course it isn't. You can't always say that the middle position is correct. I would say most of the time it's not, actually. Examples of middle ground. 1. Some people claim that God is all-powerful, all-knowing, and all-good. Yeah. Well, actually, in Indian philosophy, they claim that God is the best at everything, right? So that means he must be all good but all evil also, because he's the best in evil things also, since he's the best at everything. That's not what I think. It's not my personal position, but this is how it is viewed in India. He's the worst, he's the best thief, for instance. You can find that claim in the Vedas. Other people claim, and continuing with the example here, other people claim that God does not exist at all. Now it seems reasonable to accept a position somewhere in the middle. So it's likely that God exists, but that he is only very powerful, very knowing, and very good. That seems right to me. Right, so that's very poor reasoning. Right? As far as I'm concerned, a more black and white thinking would be the correct way here. Either God exists or it doesn't. And since there is no way to prove one way or the other, it is most likely incorrect to assume any position here. 2. Congressman Jones has proposed cutting welfare payments by 50%, while Congresswoman Shander has proposed increasing welfare payments by 10% to keep up with the inflation and costs of living increases. I think that the best proposal is the one made by Congressman Trumbull. He says that a 30% decrease in welfare payments is a good middle ground. So I think that is what we should support. So here you see an example of what I just said, right? The system that we live in is insane. So even if you take a middle ground, it's still insane. 3 months ago, that's example 3. A month ago, a tree in Bill's yard was damaged in a storm. His neighbor Joe asked him to have the tree cut down so it would not fall on Joe's new shed. Bill refused. 2 days ago, another storm blew the tree onto Joe's new shed. Joe demanded that Joe pay the cost of repairs, which was $250. Bill said that he wasn't going to pay a cent. Obviously, the best solution is to reach a compromise between two extremes, so Bill should pay Joe $125. Yeah. I don't like this example, but what the heck, who am I, right? Next is misleading vividness. Description of misleading vividness. It's a fallacy in which a very small number of particularly dramatic events are taken to outweigh a significant amount of statistical evidence. This sort of reasoning has the following form. 1. Dramatic or vivid event X occurs, and it is not in accord with the majority of the statistical evidence. 2. Therefore, events of type X are likely to occur. Now this reminds me a little bit of one we did last week, gambler's fallacy. Alright, so the problem with this one is that 1. Dramatic or vivid event X occurs. The problem with that one is that they tend to stay longer in your memory. They tend to have a deeper impact in your memory. And so, it has more weight due to that. So that's a problem. Hasn't anything to do with logical thinking, right? It's just because of the effect that it has on the psyche. For instance, the flooding. It's a huge effect that has, and today still people are talking about it, when it was probably somewhere around 11,000 years ago. right? So that kind of impact that it has on the human psyche makes it hard to come at this from a logical standpoint, right? This sort of reasoning is fallacious because the mere fact that an event is particularly vivid or dramatic does not make the event more likely to occur, especially in the face of significant statistical evidence. People often accept this sort of reasoning because particularly vivid or dramatic cases tend to make a very strong impression on the human mind. For example, if a person survives a particularly awful plane crash, he might be inclined to believe that air travel is more dangerous than other forms of travel. After all, explosions and people dying around him will have a more significant impact on his mind than will the rather dull statistics that a person is more likely to be struck by lightning than killed in a plane crash. Alright, so planes are pretty safe to fly. It should be kept in mind that taking into account the possibility of something dramatic or vivid occurring is not always fallacious. For example, a person might decide to never go skydiving because the effect of an accident can be very, very dramatic. If he knows that statistically the chances of the accident are happening are very low, but he considers even a small risk to be unacceptable, then he would not be making an error in reasoning. Yeah. Well, I'm not quite sure, maybe it's my lack of being logical, but even if you think that a small risk is unacceptable, where's the logical reasoning in that? Isn't that just a decision that you make? And so, for instance, my uncle, he used to parachute a lot. Now, I will never do that. You know, I wouldn't ever jump out of a plane. It's insane in my mind. Even the small risk that you get there is too much for me. You know, I'm not gonna die jumping out of a plane. Period. But I don't think there's any logical basis. I can't find in myself anyway a logical reasoning for that. Examples of misleading vividness. Bill and Jane are talking about buying a computer. Jane, I've been thinking about getting a computer. I'm really tired of having to wait in the library to write my papers. She has to wait in the library to write her papers? I don't get that anyway. Bill, what sort of computer do you want to get? And Jane says, well, it has to be easy to use, low priced and decent processing power. I'm thinking about getting brand X, whatever. I read in that Consumer magazine that they have been found to be very reliable in 6 independent industry studies. Right? So, of course, unfortunately, we don't know much more about these industries, but I wouldn't trust any of those. Right? Appeal to authority and all that. Bill says, I wouldn't get that brand X I just mentioned. A friend of mine bought one a month ago to finish his master's thesis. He was halfway through it when smoke started pouring out of the CPU. He didn't get his thesis done on time and he lost his financial aid. Now he's working over at a warehouse. And then Jane says, I guess I won't get brand X. Alright, so this is, you know, to me it seems more like appeal to emotion, appeal to fear specifically. 2. Joe and Drew are talking about flying. Joe, when I was flying back to school, the pilot came on the intercom and told us that the plane was having engine trouble. I looked out the window and I saw smoke billowing out of the engine nearest me. We had to make an emergency landing and there were fire trucks everywhere. I had to spend the next 6 hours sitting in the airport waiting for a flight. I was lucky I didn't die. I'm never flying again. Drew says, so how are you going to get home over Christmas break? And then Joe says, I'm going to drive. That will be a lot safer than flying. And Drew says, I don't think so. You are much more likely to get injured or killed driving than flying. And then Joe says, I don't buy that. You should have seen the smoke pouring out of that engine. I'm never getting on one of those death traps again. Yeah. So yeah, it is dramatic, and but again, this is more about fear than anything else, right? Example 3. Jane says, did you hear about the woman who was attacked in Turtle Park? And then Sarah says, yes, it was terrible. And then Jane says, don't you run there every day? And then Sarah says, yes. And then Jane says, how can you do that? I'd never be able to run there. And then Sarah says, well, as callous as this might sound, the attack was out of the ordinary. I've been running there for 3 years, and this has been the only attack. And then Sarah, sure, not Sarah. It says sure. Sure, I worry about being attacked, but I'm not going to give up my running just because there is some slight chance I'll be attacked. And Jane says, that's stupid. I'd stay away from the park if I was you. That woman was really beat up badly, so you know it's going to happen again. If you don't stay out of that park, it will probably happen to you. Alright, I don't think this is a good example either. And that's it for misleading vividness. Alright, guys. So, next one is ad hominem abusive. Alright, we've discussed ad hominem before. This is a more specific one, ad hominem abusive. Description. A personal attack is committed when a person substitutes abusive remarks for evidence when attacking another person's claim or claims. Right? So instead of attacking the claim, they're attacking the person. This line of reasoning is fallacious because the attack is directed at the person making the claim and not the claim itself. The truth, value of a claim is independent of the person making the claim. After all, no matter how repugnant an individual might be, he or she can still make true claims. Not all ad hominems are fallacious. In some cases, an individual's characteristics can have a bearing on the question of the veracity of her claims, or his claims. For example, if someone is shown to be a pathological liar, then what he says can be considered to be unreliable. However, such attacks are weak, since even pathological liars might speak the truth on occasion. In general, it is best to focus one's attention on the content of the claim and not on who made the claim. It is the content that determines the truth of the claim and not the characteristics of the person making the claim. Examples of personal attacks. 1. In a school debate, Bill claims that the president's economic plan is unrealistic. His opponent, a professor, retorts by saying, "The freshman has his facts wrong." Right, so the freshman, of course, is the ad hominem attack here. On the other hand, his opponent, a professor in what? Archaeology? So, you can't take his word either, because you need to know for sure if he's knowledgeable about economics. And because of the educational system that we have, I would say that most economics people are clueless about how economy works. There's a little book that my dad used to have, and as a child I asked him about economics a little bit, and I was asking like, these economic crises, do they happen often? And he says, well, yeah, they come about every 30 to 50 years. And he got that from a book, right? The book actually talks about waves, like a wave sign, economy going up and down and up and down. Now, these waves, they are predictable, according to the book. Now, that ought to tell you that something is fishy here, right? It seems more like economics are planned than that they are let free, right? There is a small piece of history in American history where there were no economic crises. If I'm not mistaken about the times here, that must have been somewhere between 1700 and 1800. It was just one economic boost for about 100 years. Now, if economics were let free, like it was in those days, that's what would happen, right? But so why the waves nowadays happen, most people don't know. They just know that they are there, but they don't ask why. It's because it's planned. 2. This theory about a potential cure for cancer has been introduced by a doctor who is a known lesbian feminist. I don't see why we should extend an invitation for her to speak at the World Conference on Cancer. Another difficult topic. If you go back, let's say 50 years or so, 60 years maybe, the rate of cancer was lower than it is today, much lower in fact. And since 50 or 60 years ago, we were already in the chemical revolution. And all kinds of pollutants were in our system, so to speak. Let's see, where's my tobacco, guys? Here it is. And so, you know, the rates of people getting cancer have increased dramatically. It's like 1 in 2 nowadays. I think that's insane. There's no natural thing going on here. This has more to do with our environment, changes in our environment that are causing these cancers. And then, of course, it's a huge income for a lot of people. And so finding a cure for all of these cancers would dramatically decrease the income of a lot of people. So the incentive is not there to find a cure for cancer. It's a bit like doctors here in the Netherlands, just to give you another example. It's probably like that in most countries. I'm not sure about China, to be honest with you, but because China is where this idea came from, and I'm going to tell you about. But I'm not sure if they're still adopting that nowadays. But it used to be, in the old days, in China, that a doctor would get paid by people that are healthy. And if you were sick, you would stop payment to the doctor. Now that's an incentive for the doctor to get you healthy again, right? Nowadays, it's insanely the other way around. Right? If you have to go to the doctor, that's when he makes money, right? So if he keeps you sick, he keeps getting money. It's insane, isn't it? Should be the other way around. I'm not against paying doctors. It's fine by me. But they should be paid for keeping us healthy. Another example. 3. Bill says that we should give tax breaks to companies, but he is untrustworthy, so it must be wrong to do that. Here's another example of trying to meddle within an insane system. Tax breaks to companies. Well, we must have taxes in order for the government to function. Yeah. You know, I'm not anti-government in the sense that I think it shouldn't be there at all. But 90% of it can go, as far as I'm concerned. You know, there should be. There's only one reason that springs to my mind immediately why we should have a government, and that's to keep the criminals away, right? Keep the criminals behind bars. Let's see, where were we? 4. That claim cannot be true. Dave believes it, and we know how morally repulsive he is, right? So, even if he's morally repulsive, doesn't, have any bearing on the falsity or truth of the claim, whatever it was, being made. Bill claims that Jane would be a good treasurer. However, I find Bill's behavior offensive, so I'm not going to vote for Jill. Right? So even if Bill's behavior is offensive, it says nothing about James' capability to be a good treasurer. 6. Jane says that drug use is morally wrong, but she's just a goody two-shoes Christian, so we don't have to listen to her. Alright? We attack a goody two-shoes, and just because of that, drug use is morally wrong. I'm having a bit of trouble with the word morally here. Now, leaving aside all of the drugs that are being pushed by the chemical pharmaceutical industry, right? Just forget about those for a minute. Let's just say tobacco, for instance, right? How can that be morally wrong? You know, it might be wrong in the sense that it's bad for your health, but morally wrong? Who decides that, right? Is there somebody else that says, well, you have to have bad morals because you're smoking? Excuse me? That doesn't make any sense. Seven. Bill, I don't think it's a good idea to cut social programs. And then Jill says, why not? And then Bill says, well, many people do not get a fair start in life and hence need some help. Yeah. So, is that, first of all, is that true? Do not get a fair start in life? No, possibly. But again, like I said in the beginning, you are born into an insane system that we live in. It's unhuman, as I call it, or inhumane. So, you know, unless you're born in families that we don't know the names of because they are so powerful that they will make sure their names are not known. Right? If your name is known in the by the media, like Rockefeller or whoever, then you're indispensable. You're not indispensable, then you're expendable, I mean. However, if your name is not known, you're so powerful that you can make sure that you don't appear in newspapers or CNN or whatever. Those are the real power people. Right? So unless you're born in one of them, you're born into slavery. Continuing with the example here. Bill, well, many people do not get a fair start in life and hence need some help. After all, some people have wealthy parents and have it fairly easy. I don't know about that either. You know, especially if you have wealthy parents, then it's more easy to fall in the traps of this system. And you're more easily poking through the insanity that we live under if you're not that wealthy. Others are born into poverty and ... And then Jill interrupts and says, you just say that stuff because you have a soft heart and an equally soft head. Okay, that's about it for personal attacks. I thought the first one that we did from this series was better, to be honest with you. Next is poisoning the well. This sort of quote-unquote reasoning involves trying to discredit what a person might later claim by presenting unfavorable information, be it true or false, about the person. Sounds a bit like ad hominem, right? This argument has a following form. 1. Unfavorable information, true or false, about person A is presented. 2. Therefore, any claims person A makes will be false. This sort of reasoning is obviously fallacious. The person making such an attack, like I said, ad hominem, right, is hoping that the unfavorable information will bias listeners against the person in question, and hence that they will reject any claims he or she makes. However, merely presenting unfavorable information about a person, even if it's true, hardly counts as evidence against the claim he or she might make. This is especially clear when poisoning the well is looked at as a form of ad hominem, in which the attack is made prior to the person even making the claim or claims. The following example clearly shows that this sort of reasoning is quite poor. So this setting in a classroom. Bill says, "Boy, that professor is a real jerk. I think he's some sort of Eurocentric fascist." And then Jill says, "Yeah." That's before class. Now during class, Professor Jones says, "And so we see that there was never any golden age of matriarchy in 1895 in America." And then after class, Bill says, "See what I mean?" And then Jill says, "Yeah, there must have been a golden age of matriarchy, since that jerk said there wasn't." Examples of poisoning the well. Don't listen to him, he's a scoundrel. That was one. 2. Before turning the floor over to my opponent, I ask you to remember that those who oppose my plans do not have the best wishes of the university at heart. Right? Clearly trying to attack somebody before he even speaks. Good example of ad hominem. 3. You are told prior to the meeting that your friend's boyfriend is a decadent wastrel, W-A-S-T-R-E-L. I've never seen that word. When you meet him, everything you hear him say is tainted. Actually, I've seen it once before because we already did this like maybe 1.5 years ago or so. Alright, that was poisoning the well. So the well, that would be a person giving information, right? Next, let's see, where are we? At 34, post hoc. Right, this is not one of the easiest ones. This is short, post hoc, also known as post hoc ergo propter hoc. That's the full name of it. It's false cause, questionable cause, confusing coincidental relationships with causes. Again, the cause thing. Last week we also had one with causes. It's tricky business when talking about causes. Description of post hoc. It's a fallacy with the following form. 1. A occurs before B. 2. Therefore, A is the cause of B. The post hoc fallacy derives its name from the Latin post hoc ergo propter hoc. This has been traditionally interpreted as after this, therefore because of this. This fallacy is committed when it is concluded that one event causes another simply because the proposed cause occurred before the proposed effect. More formally, the fallacy involves concluding that A causes or caused B because A occurs before B, and there is not sufficient evidence to actually warrant such a claim. It is evident that in many cases that the mere fact that A occurs before B in no way indicates a causal relationship. For example, suppose Jill, who's in London, sneezed at the exact same time an earthquake started in California. It would clearly be irrational to arrest Jill for starting a natural disaster, since there is no reason to suspect any causal connection between the two events. While such cases are quite obvious, the post hoc fallacy is fairly common, because there are cases in which there might be some connection between the events. For example, a person who has her computer crash after she installs a new piece of software would probably suspect that the software was to blame. Like Flash, for instance. If she simply concluded that the software caused the crash because it was installed before the crash, she would be committing the post hoc fallacy. In such cases, the fallacy would be committed because the evidence provided fails to justify acceptance of the causal claim. Right, so, there's not enough information here. What you would have to do is either use the option that you get in Windows. I don't know exactly the name of it, I'm trying to remember, but basically it gives you the possibility to go back a day, right? They have like points to go back to. Then try install it again and see if your computer still crashes. Then, of course, there's a possibility of uninstalling the software and see if after a reboot the computer still crashes. So there's just not enough information here. It is even theoretically possible for the fallacy to be committed when A really does cause B, provided that the evidence given consists only of the claim that A occurred before B. The key to the post hoc fallacy is not that there is no causal connection between A and B, it is that adequate evidence has not been provided for a claim that A causes B. Thus, post hoc resembles a hasty, I'm trying to say hastily, but thus, post hoc resembles a hasty generalization in that it involves making a leap to an unwarranted conclusion. In the case of a post hoc fallacy, that leap is to a causal claim instead of a general proposition. So what springs to my mind when talking about leaps, and this has nothing to do with post hoc, but it's an argument that is often used by religious people. And they will say, well, look at creation, right? The whole word creation, is debatable. but they don't realize that to start with. And then they say, well, if there is a creation, there must be a creator. Right? Now that's a huge leap. There's no justification, even if you accept the claim that the universe is a creation, right? Not surprisingly, many superstitions are probably based on post hoc reasoning. For example, suppose a person buys a good luck charm, does well on his exam, and then concludes that the good luck charm caused him to do well. This person would have fallen victim to the post hoc fallacy. This is not to say that all superstitions have no basis at all. For example, some folk cures have actually been found to work. Alright, so yeah, this is not so nice. You know, a superstition, doesn't apply to folk cures that have actually been found to work, right? So, terminology used here is not so good in my opinion. If something is a superstition, then that's what it is. If something is a myth, then that's what it is, right? You can't confuse facts with superstitions here. And this person that buys a good luck charm and then does well on his exam, what does a good luck charm have to do with the fact how well you are doing at repeating what you have been told, right? Just, again, it has nothing to do with your skills, well, except for one, of course, is to repeat what you've been told. That's when you do well on your exam. Post hoc fallacies are typically committed because people are simply not careful enough when they reason. Leaping to a causal conclusion is always easier and faster than actually investigating the phenomenon. However, such leaps tend to land far from the truth of the matter, because post hoc fallacies are committed by drawing an unjustified causal conclusion. The key to avoiding them is careful investigation. While it is true that causes precede effects, it is not true that precedents make something a cause of something else. Because of this, a causal investigation should begin with finding what occurs before the effect in question, but it should not end there. Yeah. Alright, so here's another reason why I personally have trouble with cause and event, cause and effect, I mean. This is just me talking, right? And it has to do with some line of thinking that has been used by philosophers in the past, especially those that would claim that there's no such thing as movement. This goes back to ancient Grecian philosophers. Now, to claim that there's no such thing as movement might seem insane, right? But I get where they're coming from. And of course, movement also has to do with cause and effect. Now, the problem that I have with it is that I've already come to a point where I claim that there's no such thing as the past or the future. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned as a philosopher anyway, right? So that's one of the reasons why people might claim there's no such thing as movement, right? So if you're talking about A causing B, then I'm in trouble with my standpoint that I have, right? Because something that happened in the past does not exist. And something that does not exist cannot in any way influence something that is now, right? Some of you might remember me saying, the past doesn't exist, brackets open, anymore, brackets closed. And the future doesn't exist, brackets open, yet, brackets closed. You know, that's all. The only thing that actually is now. What's going on? Vince, you need to call the station or what? You know what to do, right? Skype. If you want to be on air, you can do so. Just Skype me. Solvinur, SOLVINUR, at Skype. And if you're not on my list, send me a contact request and I'll get you in. Let's see, Yay, I got a lot of J's. MMM, NPQR. Vince, he's online, but Skype says that he's AFK. So anyway, Vince, if you want to call in, say hi, you know, you're welcome to do so. Just send me a message in Skype and I'll drag you in. Alright, so we're not done with the post hoc yet. However, we've already passed 5 o'clock by 7 minutes. So most of you will know what I'm going to do right now, right? Yeah, there's before the number actually starts, this song by Pokerface, you hear a little bit about what George Bush said in 1990 and repeated in 1991, his famous New World Order speech. Now, first of all, if you say New World Order, you're called a conspiracy nut, right? You must be insane with your New World Order. So that's a clear example of an ad hominem attack. But secondly, you know, it's not us that came up with the term. You know, especially the people born nowadays. This term is old. And here Mr. Bush is just using it. And when I played the first 30 seconds of this, you know, I tried to listen very carefully, and then at a certain point he says, and when we succeed, and then he has a small pause. Always be very wary, guys, when people pause and when making speeches like this. It is meant for you to draw your conclusions. Again, they are using your own reasoning against you, right? And then he says at a certain point, when we succeed, or if we succeed, I'm not quite sure. And then he pauses, and then he says, and we will, you know. And then it continues, then we have a real chance of getting this New World Order, right? You will hear it when I press play in a few. Now, what's wrong with this piece of information that we're getting here? Right? Think about it before I tell you. He says, and when we succeed, comma, and we will, comma, then we have a real chance of getting this new world order. Now, what is he talking about when he says, when we succeed? Succeed at what? Is he talking about the creation of this new world order? Well, it can't be, because he says that there will be a chance of getting this new world order. Right? If he succeeded, then there would be no chance. It would just be fact. Now, this is probably some kind of neural linguistic programming. It's a form of creating confusion when he's using the word chance. Right? So be aware of that. It's confusing, and it's confusing on purpose. It has a reason why it is confusing. These people don't write speeches without knowing exactly what they're doing. Alright, so here we go. You're probably gonna miss the first word, we. You're going to hear Bush, and it's at 000, but, you know, somehow we're gonna miss the word we. Alright, so stand by, here it comes. Poker Face! With a really nice song. Here we go, guys.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order. A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
guys, welcome back. It's still the 22nd of August 2015. This is the Solvinur Event with your host, Walter. We are at examples of post hoc. 1. I had been doing pretty poorly this season. Then my girlfriend gave me this neon laces for my spikes, and I won the next 3 races. Those laces must be good luck. If I keep on wearing them, I can't help but win. Good. I guess that's a good example. 2. Bill purchases a new computer and it works fine for months. He then buys and installs a new piece of software. The next time he starts up his computer, it freezes. Bill concludes that the software must be the cause of the freeze. Well, yeah, it's possible, but... 3. Joan is scratched by a cat while visiting a friend. 2 days later, she comes down with a fever. Joan concludes that the cat's scratch must be the cause of her illness. It might be other causes as well. 4. The Republicans pass a new tax reform law that benefits wealthy Americans. Shortly thereafter, the economy takes a nosedive. The Democrats claim that the tax reform caused the economic growth and they push to get rid of it. Well, yeah, it's a puppet show, right? 5. The picture on Jim's old TV goes out of focus. Jim goes over and strikes the TV soundly on the side and the picture goes back into focus. Jim tells his friends that hitting the TV fixed it. Well, I don't know if you guys have ever, quote unquote, fixed something by hitting it. I know I have. My old monitor sometimes, it's in the garbage now, but it turned green, the screen, right? And bang, you hit it on top, and poof, you get a normal screen again, right? So the problem isn't fixed, right? It's probably gonna go back to going green again at some point. But yeah, there does seem to be a causal relationship between hitting the damn thing and it functioning properly. There's too many examples of that I know that you can't just say that there's no causal relationship here. 6. Jane gets a rather large wart on her fingers. Based on the story her father told her, she cuts a potato in half, rubs it on the wart and then buries it under the light of a full moon. Over the next month, her wart shrinks and eventually vanishes. Jane writes her father to tell him how right he was about the cure. Right, so you'd need some more evidence to be able to claim that actually this potato did the job. It's possible, I don't know. It might be one of those home cures that actually work. Moving on to the next one, also a difficult one. Okay. Before we go to the next one, which is questionable cause, we're going to try and drag in somebody to the conversation I have to look up the V again. ST V things. Here we go. Now he needs a couple. Let me check Skype settings from bot. Say when ready. No. Alright, so we do have a little time to go into questionable cause. Description. The spousie has the following general form. 1. A and B are associated on a regular basis. 2. Therefore, A is the cause of B. Alright, okay. He says okay. Okay. So, now we need to bring up this other window. Right click there. And then invite a group call. Yay, it works. It's ringing. Beep, beep. Hello?
Hey, I'm ringing twice here.
Oh, whoops, I forgot to adjust the mic. Hi
Okay. Am I minute?
How
Do you have me, Walter? Hello?
Yeah, I do, but you're a bit scrambled? How do you say?
Wow.
Cutting.
Yeah, this is the first time I've Skyped in quite some time, so I wasn't even sure about the settings. I don't believe I did anything since I got this POS computer.
Yeah, it's working okay. It's working okay now. You didn't cut off any time.
First and only time I tried to Skype was with Chuck O'Celli, and he couldn't hear me at all. So I was worried if this was gonna carry it. I don't I gigs or whatever drive on this computer. Pretty low. So coincidentally, I've been listening to some different folks this past week or so. Daryl Becker on nonviolent communication, and Jan Irving and Gene O'Denning. I was listening to Gene O'Denning. There's two real good parts there on the trivium and quadrivium, and I'll drop. I'll see. I'll go grab the site. There's a really good discussion.
Repeat what you just said.
Gino Denning, I was listening. I was going to look at Trivium Education is where it's at. The interview he did with Jan Irving.
Yes, that's good.
Yeah, then a little later on, I believe it's Jan and somebody else is kind of goes after the nonviolent communication. And the last time you and I were on air, we kind of had that discussion somewhat. And I think there may be some confusion as to when to apply that, because you can only go so far with somebody. Like you're talking about talking with somebody with a religious view or a belief in God, or even a belief in evolution for that matter, because what can't be recreated, duplicated, you can't. That's fact. That's not observed if it's not observable. But you can't extrapolate.
Vince, start again from what you can't repeat, or what did you say?
Yeah, that's scientific experiment. You've got to be able to have recreatable events to, really kind of shore up your theory.
The scientific method, yes.
Yeah, so when you start out, though, you start out with your senses, your five senses, and perhaps even sixth sense, but that's that can't be proven, I don't think, right now anyway either. So that goes on to the metaphysics as well.
Vince.
Yes.
You're cutting in and out. Start again with five senses.
Yeah. So what we have is our five senses, our ability to observe that which is around us.
Yeah.
So, what we determine, we come up with some ideas and we formulate probabilities. If you went to a doctor and he's supposedly, like you were talking about, if there was an incentive to cure you, but a doctor's supposed to, make an examination, an observation, and that's what we do. we might apply certain instruments to refine searches, but all in all, we can only go so far, and we have to realize that at one point in time, there's going to be somebody you disagree with, and you can't move forward. So that nonviolent communication for me, that's when and prior to that, you've already set up, and removed the emotion part out of it, right? You build your rapport if you want to have a discussion. Now, for me, I don't debate at all, but I don't mind having a discussion. So, what are those three steps? Observation, hypotheses, and then theory, I guess. And everything always has to remain open to further information. And I think that there's logical fallacies used a lot of times by people that are, using the trivium. And certainly, as I'm trying to learn, I know that
but
I'm full of them.
No human can get away from using the trivium. It's how your mind works.
Exactly. Well, yeah, it's a formulation, but it's not always the way our mind works, because most people, their senses have been dulled by pharmaceuticals or fluorine in the water, fluoride, fillings from the dentist, medication from the doctors, the food you eat, as well as television and propaganda. And going back 100
Vince.
Vince.
Are you there, buddy? Sounds like you got a crappy internet connection.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Well, I can. The last word I heard was TV.
Okay, so went through all have been dulled. Every aspect, it's a full frontal assault, and then you go beyond that, and you've got to walk this line, and if you step out of that line and do something illegal, where then they own you, and that's further discussion on down the line, towards ownership, but
Vince, Vince, can you hear me? You can hear me, right?
Yes.
Okay, so what does this have to do with the NVC, and is it consistent with the trivium?
Well, I won't go so far as to fully define NVC. Certainly that because of wording and misunderstanding and misapplication, or just the way people use language. One word for me would mean the same. So
all right, this is too bad, Vince. I can't hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have landlines open, huh?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, we'll try again another time, Walter.
Yeah, I don't know. Something's wrong with your internet connection, or I don't know what. But
it's probably the slow computer. I don't know. All right, thanks. Hey, I'll see you guys back in chat.
Yep. Thanks for trying, Vince.
10-4.
Take care, buddy. All right, so... guys, this had to do with NVC, nonviolent communication. It's like handling people with care, I guess, one would say. I'm not at all a proponent of it. Truth hurts, as Charles would say, right? That's just a fact. And if you are talking to people that we dare call asleep, there is no way you can get around hurting these people, because you're breaking down their view of how the world works. And they don't want that. They want to be right. They want to be correct in how they think about how the system works. But they're not. And so there's no soft way in which you can have a discussion with people that are quote unquote asleep. Right? So there's I guess a video I should mention here. You should probably get it in YouTube. I'll try it before even claiming this on air. Even saying it. If this term actually does bring up what I did watch and I thought was pretty good. Is NVC consistent with the trivium? Let's see what we get here. Yes, that will bring it up. The first one by Gnostic Media. Nonviolent Communication Part 1. Is NVC consistent with the trivium method? And there they break down some of the things that have to do with nonviolent communication, also known as NVC. It's a 2-hour 7-minute video of part 1. Then below that there's the Trivium, NVC and Mind Control series introduction. Below that is Tragedy and Hope, who I intend to get on air somewhere. Getting in contact with them again in October, because he was kind of busy doing work on footage that he made. Right? History connected. History ... connected. Merging the Trivium method with nonviolent communication. Right, so that's another one that might be interesting to watch. And of course there's the whole Gino Denning thing. Right, if you haven't watched that yet, I do suggest you type in Gino Denning in the YouTube. One of my events should also be popping up there. Alright, so non-violent communication. I don't see how you can be non-violent, right? There has to be some violence involved when tearing people from their dreams. Right? You have to be violent in some way. It's not that you want to be violent, but it has to do with the state that other people are in. They can only be torn from their delusion by words that come across as violent to them. But you're not specifically being violent, but the method that you might use to tear somebody from their dreams, to quote-unquote wake them up, are kind of violent. Because you're breaking down their views. You're breaking down the illusions that these people live in. Right? So it's violence all over. I thought it was pretty violent when I, quote-unquote, woke up. You know, I couldn't even imagine a more violent thing than waking up. It's worse than death. It's worse than killing, in my opinion. Right? It's better to be dead than wake up from your slumber, in my opinion. Because if you've woken up, you've realized that you've been lied to all your life, for instance. That you've been mind controlled. That your free will has been taken away. Using mind control techniques. There's no... It's the most violent thing that can be, being asleep. I can't imagine something more violent than being asleep. Right? And then these people that are asleep, they're, usually they're happy, quote unquote happy. Right? They're confused, but because they don't see it, they think that this is normal. When you're born into this society and your parents don't tell you what's going on, then you accept it, this system, as being normal. Now that's the most violent thing. And it must be a violent experience to be torn away from illusion and dreams. Right? So yeah, this non-violent communication, when I watch these videos that Vince mentioned, it seemed to me more like it is a form of neuro-linguistic programming. That's what I'm thinking that it is. As, going back to what Bush just said in the poker face thing I just mentioned, I just played, right? I mentioned there that he's using the word chance. That's the same as using the word maybe. Those are used in order to confuse you, those words. To insecure you. Now that's violent, right? And then they call that non-violent communication. It's very violent to keep people insecure. So that's about it, what I'm going to say about that. You guys can check out the video. I'll put it into in the chat room. If you guys, it's the top one here in the Netherlands anyway. It's the top one. The one at the top, non-violent communication, part 1. Is it consistent with the trivium method? Okay, check it out, guys. Now click this away, click that away, this one away. Now we got the clear screen. And the next fallacy that we are going to do School Sucks podcast, mentions Vince in the chat room. Yeah, I think they're pretty good. Hey there, Crack, how you doing, buddy? Description of questionable cause, we just did that. The general idea behind this fallacy is that it is an error in reasoning to conclude that one thing causes another simply because the two are associated on a regular basis. More formally, this fallacy is committed when it is concluded that A is the cause of B simply because they are associated on a regular basis. Well, that's what you just said, right? The error being made is that a causal conclusion is being drawn from inadequate evidence. The questionable cause fallacy is actually a general type of fallacy. Any causal fallacy that involves an error in a reasoning due to a failure to adequately investigate the suspected cause is a fallacy of this type. Thus, fallacies like post hoc and confusing cause and effect are specific examples of the general questionable cause fallacy. Right? Like many fallacies are categorized under appeal to emotion. Right? Like ad baculum, for instance. Appeal to fear. Causal reasoning can be quite difficult, since causation is a rather complex philosophical issue. Yes, it is. It's very complex. It kind of to avoid contradictions when talking causality, it is claimed by Indian philosophers that, quote unquote, God is causeless. Right? There's no cause that made God exist. Now they have to claim that, otherwise you would get into endless repetition, endless something else. I'm using the word repetition here. There's a better word for it, but I guess endless repetition will satisfy anyway, because if you want to say that, well, something must have caused God to come into existence, then what caused the cause to come into existence? And so you get that's what it is, infinite regression. You can't do that. That's not logically sound. So what do? Well, then, of course, quote unquote, of course, God must have no cause. Right? But it's a forced conclusion. It's not based on any facts that we know of. Right? So the whole causal thing is pretty difficult. Continuing, the complexity of causation is briefly discussed in the context of the specific versions of this fallacy. Really? Did you actually do that? Because I must have missed it then, or I just don't remember. The key to avoiding the questionable cause fallacy is to take due care in drawing causal conclusions. This requires taking steps to adequately investigate the phenomena in question, as well as using the proper methods of careful investigation. Examples. Joe gets a chain letter that threatens him with dire consequences if he breaks the chain. He laughs at it and throws it in the garbage. On his way to work, he slips and breaks his leg. When he gets back from the hospital, he sends out 200 copies of the chain letter, hoping to avoid further accidents. You can just see it, right? 200 people more breaking their leg. Yeah. Cheap example, in my opinion. 2. When investigating a small pond of a group of graduate students, now I'm reading this wrong. It says, when investigating a small pond, a group of graduate students found that there was a severe drop in fish population. Further investigation revealed that the fish's food supply had also been severely reduced. At first, the students believed that the lack of food was killing the fish, but then they realized they had to find out what was causing the decline in the food supply. Yeah. The students suspected acid rain was the cause of both the reduction in the fish population as well as the food supply. However, the local business council insisted that it was just a lack of food that caused the reduction in the fish population. Most of the townspeople agreed with the conclusion, since it seemed pretty obvious that a lack of food would cause the fish to die. Okay, I guess that's neglected effect, neglected cause, I guess. Next is red herring, number 36, also known as smokescreen. Wild goose chase. Description. A red herring is a fallacy in which an irrelevant topic is presented in order to divert attention from the original issue. The basic idea is to win an argument by leading attention away from the argument and to another topic. This sort of reasoning has the following form. Topic A is under discussion. Topic B is introduced under the guise of being relevant to topic A, when topic B is actually not relevant to topic A. And then 3, topic A is abandoned. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because merely changing the topic of discussion hardly counts as an argument against the claim. Examples. We admit that this measure is popular, but we also urge you to note that there are so many bond issues and on this ballot that the whole thing is getting ridiculous. So bond issues on this ballot, how does that relate, or how is that relevant to this measure, right? Second example, this is an argument for a tax cut. I've begun to think that there is some merit in the Republicans' tax cut plan. I suggest that you come up with something like it. Because if we, Democrats, are going to survive as a party, we have to show that we are as tough-minded as the Republicans, since that is what the public wants. Right, so how does tough-mindedness relate to seeing merit in tax cuts? Right, next is argument for making grad school requirements stricter. I think there is a great merit in making the requirements stricter for the graduate students. I recommend that you support it too. After all, we are in a budget crisis and we do not want our salaries affected. Alright, so what do budget crisis, how is that relevant to requirements being stricter? Next one is known as relativist fallacy. Hold on, guys. Relativist fallacy is committed when a person rejects a claim by asserting that the claim might be true for others, but is not for him. This sort of reasoning has the following form. This is an interesting topic. This is probably pretty much used, since we've all been indoctrinated with a Kantian way of thinking, which is subjectivist. And according to a subjectivist, things can be true for you, but not for me. Alright, that's insane. I just don't have words for that. If a thing is true, then it's true for everybody. If a thing is real, then it's real for everybody. If a thing exists, then it exists for everybody, not just for some people. Right? That should make enough sense on its own. Right? But give you another quote-unquote argument. There's no statement you can make that is true for you, but not for me. It's impossible. It has the following form. 1. Claim X is presented. 2. Person A asserts that X may be true for others, but is not true for him/her. 3. Therefore, A is justified in rejecting X. In this context, relativism is the view that truth is relative to Z, a person, time, culture, place, etc. This is not the view that claims will be true at different times or of different people, but the view that a claim could be true for one person and false for another at the same time. Right? That can't be. It would be violating the law of identification. A is A. In many cases, when people say that X is true for me, what they really mean is, I believe X, or X is true about me. It is important to be quite clear about the distinction between being true about a person and being true for a person. A claim is true about a person if the claim is a statement that describes the person correctly. For example, Bill has blue eyes is true for Bill if Bill has blue eyes. To make a claim such as X is true for Bill is to say that the claim is true for Bill and that it need not be true for others. It goes on with, for example, kind of reluctant to start reading it because it's probably not a very good one, but here it goes anyway. For example, 1 and 1 equals 23 is true for Bill, would mean that for Bill, 1 and 1 actually does equal 23. Not that he merely believes that 1 and 1 equals 23, brackets open, that would be, it is true of Bill that he believes 1 and 1 equals 23, right? So it's the difference between of and for, right? Another example would be the claim that the earth is flat is true for Bill, would mean that the earth really is flat for Bill. In other words, Bill would be in a different world than the rest of the human race. Since these situations, 1 and 1 being 23 and the earth being flat for Bill, are extremely strange, it certainly seems that truth is not relative to individuals, but beliefs are. Right? I'm more of a objectivist in that sense, I found out, by studying a little bit of what objectivism is about. Examples of relativist fallacy, which, by the way, it says here at the top, aka the subjectivist fallacy, right? Compare subjectivism and objectivism with each other and, see which makes more sense to you. 1. Jill, look at this. Bill, I read that people who do not get enough exercise tend to be unhealthy. And then Bill says, that may be true for you, but it's not true for me. Bad example. I don't know why, but this just came up a little while ago also. Is somebody makes the claim, for instance, they say, well, people that exercise tend to be healthy, right? It's a bit of the opposite of what I just said, right? They say People who exercise tend to be healthy, right? And then the next sentence they say, well, then you should be exercising if you want to be healthy, right? Even, if it's true that people who exercise are healthy, it doesn't mean that it's the exercise that keeps them healthy, right? Because it's probably true that people who exercise don't drink, don't smoke, don't eat bad food, and so on, right? Next, number 2. Jill, I think that so-called argument you use to defend your position is terrible. After all, a fallacy hardly counts as an argument. And then Bill says, that may be true for you, but it's not true for me. I don't get these examples. What I said before, even when we just started this whole thing, sounds much stronger, right? Number 3, Bill, your position results in a contradiction, so I can't accept it. Yes. Subjectivism leads to contradictions. Dave, contradictions may be bad in your Eurocentric, oppressive, logical worldview, but I don't think they are bad. Therefore, my position is just fine. There were philosophers in the past, and they said, well, if there's no contradictions, then there's something wrong. They had to have contradictions in order for them to accept an idea. How crazy can you get, right? Next. Slippery slope. The slippery slope is a fallacy in which a person asserts that some event must inevitably follow from another, without any argument for the inevitability of the event in question. In some cases, there are a series of steps of gradations between one event and the one in question, and no reason is given as to why the intervening steps or gradations will simply be bypassed. It has the following form. Event X has occurred, brackets open, or will or might occur, brackets close. 2. Therefore, event Y will inevitably happen. This sort of reasoning is fallacious because there is no reason to believe that one event must inevitably follow from another without an argument for such a claim. This is especially clear in cases when there is a significant number of steps or gradations between one event and another. We have to stop the examples. 1. We have to stop the tuition increase. The next thing you'll know, they'll be charging $40,000 for a semester. Alright, it's 58. We need to stop it for now. Let's see who survived this event in the chat room. Captain Gringo, Cracker, Duck Me, Hopper, Joe, Jules, Louis, Number, Road, Tomato, Victory. Thanks for listening.
Inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings.
Take care, everybody. Listen to what Huxley says. Bye-bye.
An inside job? How dare you? How dare you?
To create, so to say, mass-produced models of human beings arranged in some kind of a scientific